Hello and welcome to the Mobility Series. Today I want to take you through a routine where we explore archetypal postures. Well, what exactly are archetypal postures? Well, it's pretty much the old-fashioned way of sitting down before the invention of chairs. And if you look at the cultures that adopt a lot of their sitting in these postures, you'll see that they have some of the lowest rates of musculoskeletal pain. What I really like about these postures is they're nice and easy to do if you've had a long day sitting at a desk or a lot of driving. They're great to do in front of the TV, and they act as a fantastic way to assess the body to see where your tension lies in your own body. So we'll get straight into it. So the first one is just our kneeling posture. Okay, so we're going to have the fronts of the feet flat on the mat, and we're going to sit back onto the heels and gently sitting up nice and tall. Now, if this is really uncomfortable on your knees or the fronts of the feet, what we can do is we can grab a pillow and we can just pop that underneath the backs of the legs just to take a little bit of the pressure off. Okay, we can just sit here. So what we're doing here is we're putting our knees into this full range of motion, and we're putting the fronts of the feet that very rarely get into this position. We're challenging the range of motion through the fronts of the feet. So it's a great one to do to work on ankle mobility and just check how the knees are. So if you're comfortable sitting on your heels like so, and this feels relatively comfortable, then that's fantastic. That tells me that you've got really good range of motion through the knees, okay? And we're managing to sit here nice and comfortably. Now, if you get into this position and it's not challenging at all, what we can do is we can just sit back a little bit onto the fronts of the feet and just allow the fronts of the feet to stretch out. If we're sitting here and it's really uncomfortable and we've got the pillow under the backs of the legs, then we just need to hang out there and just allow the body to ease in and gently improve that range of motion. Now, the range of motion in your knees isn't going to suddenly be perfect the next day. It's something that you're going to have to work at each day, at least 15-20 minutes. Instead of sitting in the sofa when we get back from work, sit down on the ground and just sit down in this posture. Okay, so that's the first one. That's our kneeling posture. The second one I want to introduce is our drinking posture. Okay, so tucking the toes underneath the feet, knees together, and we're going to come back and sit onto the heels. And again, we can place the pillow, the backs of the legs, just to take a little bit of pressure off the knees and off the feet. And I want you to stand up nice and tall or sit up nice and tall and just allow the body just to sink into this stretch. Now, what we're doing here, again, we're working on knee mobility, but we're also now introducing the soles of our feet. So we're bringing the toes underneath us, we're sitting back onto the heels, keeping the feet in line. So we're working through the plantar fascia, which are the soles of the feet. And what's really important about that part of the body is it connects up through the back of the heel and into our calf, into our hamstrings, and then into our glutes and into our back, all the way up to the neck and over the top of our skull. So it's really important to work out where the tension is in your body. And you might feel like you have really tight calves or you have really tight hamstrings, but actually the tension might lay in the soles of the feet, and this is the area that we need to be working on. So again, this should be relatively comfortable. If it isn't, then just come out a little bit, take the pressure off, take a breather, and then come back in. Okay. Now, if you can sit here very comfortably with no pain at all, that tells me that you've got good range of motion through the soles of the feet in this pattern. We've got good range of motion through the knees and the ankles and the feet are in tune, are working well. Okay, so from here, we're going to go into a kneeling posture. So again, leaving the foot where it is, and we're going to sit down and work through that sole of the foot. Okay, so it's a little bit more intense on the one knee, and we can sit down. So now we're introducing hip flexion in our left hand side. And this might be really uncomfortable to actually get the hip actually in this position. If this is just a little bit too intense, then we can drop the foot down, lay the front of the foot on the mat and sit down on the back of the heel. So this is just a little bit less intense, and again we can put the pillow behind the leg and just sitting down and just take a bit of the pressure off. So putting yourself into this slightly different position challenges the body in a slightly different way. So left hip is in flexion. We're challenging our right knee flexion, so how well that knee bends, and we're challenging the fronts of our feet, or if we're up on our toes, we're challenging the sole of our foot, as well as all the other ranges of motion through the hip and through that knee. So a really good one to practice. Even just balancing here might be challenging for you, so just take it nice and slowly. Now what I like about this now is we can swap out the feet and come to the other side. And this is where we're going to start really unearthing maybe some imbalances through the body. So you might find that you could have really easily done it on the left hand side, but now we're shifting over to the right. Suddenly that right hip might feel quite tight, or the sole of the foot on this left hand side feels tight. So again, just modify it and adjust it where needed, popping the pillow behind the back of the leg if needed. If it's too intense and we just want to take a little bit in pressure off, then lay the front of the foot down and just sit down here. So again, a slightly different pattern, putting pressure on that right hand side. So when I get clients into these positions, this is where I start looking at imbalances through the body, and this gives me an idea of where that client has its tension and areas that we need to work on. So they're really good assessment tools, and it's just basic movement. It's literally just putting these joints through the ranges of motion that they're actually designed to do. And what happens when we're sitting at the desk or we do a lot of driving, we just simply don't get into these positions. And when we don't use it, we lose it, unfortunately. Okay. So now we're going to get into a couple of other sitting postures where we're going to challenge internal and external rotation of the hips. So we're going to lay the right knee down on the mat, and we're going to have our left knee down the side here. Okay, so we're working a little bit on internal rotation on this left hand side and external rotation of the hip on the right hand side. So we should be able to sit up relatively straight. Obviously we're not on even platform through our pelvis, so there's going to be a slight difference in how level we are. But we should be able to, generally speaking, sit here with some comfort. Now if you're finding you can't get the knee down to the mat, then that tells me that external rotation is limited. And if we're really struggling to get this hip and the foot out to the side, that tells me internal rotation on the left hand side is restricted. So this is just the process that I go through when I'm checking how in tune people are when they move. And again, the hips are designed for great range of motion, so this should be relatively straightforward, and if it isn't, then it just gives you an idea of areas to work on. Now the thing is, we're not sitting in these postures every day, so it's going to be a little bit challenging. But the best thing to do is when we get home from work, when we've had a long day in the car, jump down on the ground and spend 15-20 minutes every night or every morning just sitting in some of these postures that really challenge you and your body. Okay, let's swap sides now. So we're going to bring that right foot behind and opening up the left hip. So external rotation on this left hand side and a little bit of internal rotation on this right hand side. So again, just swapping from side to side, you're going to really notice if there is an imbalance, where that imbalance lies. So a great assessment tool. Great way to be sitting in the evening, watching the TV, doing some work. If you've got a coffee table in front of you and you need to do some computer work, these are great positions just to get into, just to challenge the body. So holding it here, and by now you're either feeling really tight and stiff through these patterns, or some of them just might be nice and comfortable, and they're postures that you may not need to do, but it's always worth doing them and keeping them nice and consistent. So again, sitting up and standing up nice and tall. Okay. Now we're going to go back to our school days where we used to sit in assembly in cross-leg position. So most children can do this because they do it every day and they've got that nice mobility through the hips. So sitting here with the cross legs and seeing how well you can do this. And again, it might be that one way is nice and easy, but when we swap out the legs and bring the other foot across, it might just challenge the body in a slightly different way. So there's no right or wrong, we're just exploring how well the body moves. So sitting here. Now again, if you're really struggling and the back is hard to stay nice and tall, then we might just need to sit against a wall just to support the back, or we might just need to bring the feet out in front a little bit just to take a bit of the pressure off. And it might be that one hip is kind of okay, but if we bring the other hip out like this, it just makes it a little bit more accessible. So play around with these postures and just see what feels comfortable for you. Challenge the body, but don't force it. Okay, and then we can swap sides, bring the feet in, and we might have that left foot out, staying nice and tall through the back, and just dropping that right hip out to the side. Okay, and then our final posture, which we've gone through a lot in the other series, is our basic squat. So being able to sit down in our squat position, we can have the heels slightly raised off the ground. We can even put a pillow or rolled up towels underneath the heels just to support. But the important thing is that we keep the knees out to the side. They're not rolling in, we're not round in the back. We're just sitting up nice and tall and put the elbows in between the knees. And again, you look at the cultures that do a lot of squatting. So when they're preparing their food, sitting down, a lot of the Asian cultures have some of the greatest range of motion through their hips and some of the lowest rates of musculoskeletal pain. So again, this is just a fantastic one to get into as much as you can during the day. Again, it doesn't matter if the heels are slightly off the mat. The most important thing is that we're getting our hip into this full hip flexion. We're lining up the heels. And again, we can have the feet a little bit wider. Everybody is slightly different. So work with your body. The most important thing here is not to force it too much. If you need to hold on to something, we can hold on to a coffee table out in front. We can hang out here. And if you can hold this for 5 minutes in one sitting, then that's going to be fantastic. If it's just too much, then come out, take a breather, and then rejoin the sitting posture. Okay, good work. And then coming back down onto the mat in our cross-legged position. So there are a number of archetypal postures that I've gone through today, and what I would highly recommend is that you jump down on the ground, you try some of these postures, you see where the restrictions are in your body. They are quite challenging on a lot of people, okay, because we're very rarely sitting down on the ground and putting our body into these positions. So try them out, see where the imbalances are. Hope you learned something from today's session. Thanks for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you on the mat again tomorrow. Thank you very much.